Have you ever plunged down a 35-foot waterfall or composed a beautiful piece of music on the piano? What about living in a foreign country as a teenager or learning to speak Mandarin Chinese? My guest, Jon Cheney, has done all of this and more. In this episode, we dive into Jon's thrilling adventures in whitewater kayaking. But beyond his adrenaline-fueled experiences, Jon is also a creator involved in so many pursuits that it can sometimes feel overwhelming to know which path to take. Fortunately, Jon is a man of faith, and his guiding principle, one that I love as well, is simple. It mattereth not, only be faithful. Get ready for an episode full of adventure, inspiration, and valuable life lessons with Jon Cheney. Welcome to Journey with Jake. This is a podcast about adventure and how through our adventures we can overcome the challenges of life that come our way. While I expect you will learn some things about different adventures, this show will entertain you. Each episode will feature a different guest or guests as they share experiences and stories from the different adventures they have been on. Not only will you be entertained, but you will also hear the failures and trials each guest faces and what they have done or are doing to overcome the hardships that come their way. My goal is to take each of us on a journey through the experiences of my guests with the hope that you'll be entertained and inspired to overcome your day-to-day challenges. After all, it's not all about the destination as it is about the journey. Welcome back to the show. I'm Jake Bushman, your host of Journey with Jake. Today's episode is a fascinating conversation with Jon Cheney. From whitewater kayaking to composing music, Jon is incredibly talented, and I know you're going to love hearing his stories and insights. Before we dive in, just a few quick housekeeping items. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Journey with Jake wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch episodes on YouTube. Just search Journey with Jake podcast. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Want to connect with me and get behind the scenes content? Follow me on Instagram at Journey with Jake podcast to see clips from past and upcoming episodes and say hello. Journey with Jake is proud to be part of the Podmatch Podcast Network. If you're looking for more great independent podcasts, check out podmatch.com/network. This is the first time I've had a kayaker on the show, and I know you'll enjoy not only Jon's thrilling stories, but also the powerful life lessons he shares. If you like this episode, you might also enjoy episode 18 with Brooke Wheeler, where she shares her experiences with pack rafting and river rafting. All right, let's jump in. Here's my conversation with Jon Cheney. All right, I'm excited today. I have Jon Cheney on the call. I was messing up. I was calling him Cheney. I bet a lot of people do that. Most people call you Cheney. All right.
Very common. I will answer to both.
All right. That's good because I call people all kinds of things on this podcast sometimes. So I apologize if I say it wrong. Just, grin and bear it and correct me. Cheney, Jon Cheney. Hey, welcome to Journey with Jake.
Thanks so much, Jake. Glad to meet you and excited to be here today and talk about adventure.
Absolutely. We talk about adventure on this podcast. That's what it's all about. It's about overcoming challenges through adventure, but it's also your journey. It's a journey with Jake. So it's kind of who you are, where you come from, things you've learned, how you've grown, things like that. So before we dive into some of your adventures, and we're going to get into some whitewater kayaking, which seems really cool to me. So we're going to talk about that amongst some other things. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about Jon, where you're from, kind of a little background so we know who you are.
Yeah. So originally from Houston, Texas, born and raised there, 4 sisters. I'm the oldest of 5 and had wonderful parents, born of goodly parents, as they say. When I turned 12, we were actually about to move to Utah, which is a pretty cool story, but we ended up detouring to Paraguay for a few years. And my parents were served as mission presidents there, and that was an adventure for sure. I was a teenager, in a foreign country, learned Spanish, lots of great memories there. And then came back, we ended up, moving to Utah after that and ended up in Sandy. That's where I went to high school. And then BYU, I served a mission in Taiwan, came back and majored in Chinese and in business, got married. And now I have 4 kids and been married for about 13 years now. And we live in West Mountain, Utah. And I love to do a bunch of things. Obviously whitewater kayaking. I really love to create. I've always loved having a GoPro with me, I've got one just sitting right here. I always have a GoPro, whether it's for adventure or just, going to the bottom of a pool or something fun like that, or even just, handing it to my kids as they go down a slide. So I always like creating videos and music, and I'm a musician, I'm a composer. I've got,
There we
TVs,
go. Yeah.
studio, got a piano there and a piano leaning up against the wall over there with more computers and another piano right there and guitars. And anyway, I love music. I love creating. And that really probably drives everything that I do is this creation thing. And I actually really love to inspire others to create as well. And so from that creation bug that's in me, I'm also an entrepreneur and have started a few companies and sold them and done a lot of stuff in that arena. And I'm writing a book. And again, it's just, if it's creation, I'm probably dabbling in it and probably doing most of it just okay. But I really enjoy it. I love what I believe is a God-given gift of creation that everybody has, not just me. Everyone has that gift to create. I think that's an eternal gift that's really, really exciting, whether it's the power of creation of other humans by actually having children, all the way down to, hey, you know what, I'm going to knit something today, or I'm going to make a beautiful meal, or I'm going to, compose a symphony or whatever it might be. Right. And then today you have influencers, you have social media, everyone is.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'm probably just like everybody else, and I love to create and share that with others.
Wow. You've done a lot. There's a whole bunch of things happening that you've done. Probably a whole bunch more. You're not an old man by any stretch. So you probably got a lot more things that are going to be happening for you. Let's talk about that creation for a minute. Is there anything as a kid growing up? What were the things that you did as a kid that kind of drove that creation? I mean, obviously you said you're into music. I'm guessing you started young in music.
Yeah, I started very, very young. And I think, I was talking about God-given gifts, and I certainly do believe that some people just are gifted. They've been given a gift from God, or they've worked really hard to develop that gift or whatever it is. And the piano is one of those things for me specifically, right? I play a lot of instruments, but piano, I started when I was very, very young. My parents were musical. My parents, when they were young, I was probably 2 years old or so when they bought their first grand piano. And they had a grand piano before they had a bed frame. They had a mattress and a box spring on the ground, and they said, we need to buy a piano. We need music in our house. And they just kind of made that decision early on. And I was taught by my mom and my grandma, just, here and there, nothing really like, oh, hey, let's sit down and have your 30-minute piano lesson, kind of just offhand. And then probably at about the age of 4 or 5, I started with some piano lessons, had them until I was about 12, pretty regularly, and then moved to Paraguay. And then I was kind of on my own from then. But yeah, it started young. And I think probably at about the age of 15, I really started composing a lot. And I'll back up a tiny bit there. At about age 13, I was introduced to a new type of music that I didn't really have much experience with, which was called jazz. And jazz requires a lot of on-the-spot creation. Like they say, okay, hey, it's your turn to do a solo and start improvising. And all I have is some chords in front of me. And there's, a rhythm section going, drums and a bass and some chord progressions. And I just have to make something up on the spot, on the fly. And I was really uncomfortable the first time I had to do that. And, after doing it a few thousand times, I got better at it and started saying, hey, I could probably write my own music. And I started coming up with my own things. And anyway, but I've always just loved creation, and I've really loved media. I remember growing up watching things like Star Wars and stuff like that everybody did, but I just loved paying attention to the details and thinking about how it was made. Like, how did they get that shot? How did they do that technology? How did they make that laser look like that? Like, what was that exactly? Was that a computer generated thing, or was it some sort of prop or something? Anyway, so I would always just kind of think about how things were made, and then got into video creation pretty young as well.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, all kinds of create. That's a good description of you then, a creator, because it sounds like music, media, those are two huge, big things. When you think of creators, those are two big things you think of.
Totally.
Did you ever have, when you were a kid and you had those, you're learning the piano? Because I've heard of some kids who are forced into it or whatever, and they resent it. Did you ever have any feelings like that, or did you always enjoy it? Or was there moments where you're like, I don't know about music?
I had a pretty good teacher that kind of let me choose what I wanted to learn within a certain boundary, right? She'd say, here are some books, pick something that you like. And I picked the theme to Jurassic Park. And I picked, the theme to whatever, Indiana Jones, and the John Dunbar theme, and Dances with Wolves, and, whatever. I learned all this movie music. And that, before we got on here, I was playing my trusty Spotify playlist of soundtracks. I love soundtracks, and I write a lot like many of the great soundtrack composers, John Williams, Thomas Newman, Alan Silvestri, all those guys. And so I think I just got inspired early on because I wasn't forced to do it. Then I moved to Paraguay. I'm a teenager looking for stuff to do. We don't have mission presidents' homes aren't like crazy big and nice. They're fine. They're very comfortable. No complaints there. But we had a piano, we had a trampoline outside, and we even had a pool. But, I can only do those other things so much. And I just found myself constantly coming back to the piano and saying, hey, this is cool. And I'd pull out those movie books, and I'd have these movie books of 200 different movies. And I'd just read through the whole thing. And I got so good at it. And I just really enjoyed it. And then I started getting good at this jazz piece where I would then be able to say, okay, now, instead of only having the notes that are in front of me, what can I add to it or take away from it? Or how can I change it? Or can I move it up and down? Can I change keys? Can I just modify it to become a little bit more my own? And that was the stepping stone towards saying, okay, I can completely compose something that's my own now. And now it just comes naturally to be able to do it. But creation, the beginning of creation is hard. When you first start, it's not easy.
Sure.
You have to exercise that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I don't have any music abilities at all. So when I hear someone say that they compose, and you kind of were explaining a little bit there, that kind of helped me understand a little bit. It's almost, to me, it's like a foreign language. And
it is. Absolutely.
There you are in Paraguay learning Spanish, which is a foreign language.
Yeah, Pete, they say that Chinese is one of the hardest languages to learn. And I learned it on my mission.
And Chinese, yeah.
I learned it very, very quickly. And it wasn't because I think I'm just really smart. I think it was because, number one, I had already learned Spanish. So I'd already learned how to approach communicating in a different language. And number two, Chinese has a tone system where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 5 different tones, at least in Mandarin, 7 in Cantonese. But you have this tone system that is kind of musical. You have a high one and a low one and a rising tone and a lowering tone and different things like that. And so there's no question that music was a language. And so I already knew English, and then I learned Spanish, and I was a musician. And so going to Chinese was, I think God just said, hey, he'll be able to learn Chinese easily, head on over. Right. And so I really loved it. I really loved Chinese. It became really, really good and really took the language apart. Again, I liked understanding why the language was put together in the way it is. And Chinese is just a bunch of symbols, a bunch of codes kind of, right? Where you have like the symbol for glory, which is actually 3 trees over fire, right? That's the symbol for glory. And so what does that mean? I don't know. To me, it reminds me of a burning bush and something glorious happening as a result of that, or glory being displayed. And so I like understanding the why behind how things are put together. And I think that's part of what makes me at least a curious creator.
Yeah, definitely. And learning that Chinese, I mean, obviously then you majored in that in college and business, combine the two.
Yeah, I figured, honestly, when I first went into BYU, I was a declared accounting major. And it's because what my dad had done, and he was very successful, and, he did all these great things. And I'm like, well, hey, he did all right. I'll just kind of follow in his footsteps. I went to my first class. I don't know if you went to BYU or took accounting, or if you did, if Norm Nemro was the teacher at the time. He's been there forever. But man, that guy, even on 2x speed, was really tough to watch and listen and learn from. And anyway, I didn't. Debits and credits, I'm still trying to figure it out. That's probably why I'm always in debt. No, I'm just kidding. But bottom line is, I just didn't really enjoy it. And so I quickly changed to a music major. I said, I got to do something that I really enjoy. So I switched to a music major, and that was fun for about 4 classes. And then I was like, the teacher said, no, I want you to write something that's like this. And I don't want you to do this thing. I want you to really do this. And I was like, no, I don't like being told how to create. I want to do it my way. Then I went on a mission. I had some time to think about it, came back, and I was like, all right, I know I want to be an entrepreneur. But I also had this thought in my mind of President Hinckley had said, obtain as much education as possible. And I just had that in my mind. So I said, okay, the way I'm going to apply that in my life is, besides being a lifelong learner, but for college, I'm just going to graduate, right? I'm going to figure out what's the fastest way out of here. And Chinese was the fastest way out of it, because you could graduate with a huge amount of credits because it's a really difficult thing. And so I was immediately a junior. I also had, 70 credits, AP credits or so from high school and things like that. And so I had, a quick pathway out. But I also said, you know what, if I'm doing Chinese, I do want to make money, in life. I do want to do that too. I don't want to just be a Chinese professor, but I bet you there's going to be a growing need to do business with China. And so that was my
Imagine that.
I did it, and here I am. I have used my Chinese. I'm not quite doing. I have been to China several times and actually done a decent amount over there, but my current business doesn't really do it much. Anyway,
Wow. I love it. Wow. Incredible. Languages, music. And in the meantime, adventure. You love adventure. For you, John, what does adventure mean to you?
going outside. Honestly, like, I mean, you can obviously have adventures inside as well, but going outside for me is really what I think about when I say I'm an adventurer. I'm outside hiking, I'm kayaking, I'm skiing, maybe I'm even golfing and looking for my ball that I hit off on the side. That's more of an adventure. And, running, jogging, hiking, climbing, whatever I can find in the mountains, just going up and saying, hey, I see that peak, let's get up there. Right? Or I wonder what's in that cave. Can we get to that spot right there? Heck, I want to climb around on the cool structures inside the chapel when we're sitting in sacrament meeting. I'm like figuring out how to climb up. Anyway, I love adventure. I've always been, so I was a gymnast growing up as well. And I coached for many years on that. And so I just was I had good control of my body, right? And so I was able to pick up things pretty quickly, like skis and being able to twist and jump and flip and, do fun things like that. And I enjoyed mountain biking. I enjoyed all those things. But when we got back from Paraguay, um, my dad and I was a teenager. I'm 15 years old, and there was always just a little bit of like, hey, my dad's like, how do I connect more with my son and do something cool? And so he was looking one day in Outside magazine and just kind of saw this little ad for a kayak school out in Northern California called Otter Bar. And in fact, I've got a sticker of it right there. Anyway, and that kayak school was this kind of private thing, like very like small, 15 people per week, a couple $1,000 for the whole week, all included, and just like top notch, really fun. So you want to go kayaking? I said, sure, why not? I didn't really think much of it, but I went
Wow.
there, and turns out that the kayaking world is not huge, right? It's not like the NBA where there's millions, hundreds of millions, or, a billion fans. It's relatively small. The best in the world are the ones that end up teaching later on. And so, and at least at the really, really good places like Otter Bar. And Otter Bar was best of the best, right? It was the Sturgis family, and one of their sons, Russ Sturgis, is a world champion multiple times over, about a year older than me. And I got to learn from people like that how to kayak, and the way that they talked about it and the way that they taught it. And then just the experience of finally getting onto big rapids. And you start small, right? And then you work up, you learn how to roll the boat over and all that stuff. But the first time you go down a class 3 rapid, these huge things, or you learn how to surf on a wave, where you can just going back and forth and you could just sit there all day long on this standing wave and do tricks and all this stuff. I was hooked, man. I came home from that week and I said, I'm a kayaker. And I ended up going back to that same school about 11 different times over the years, and it ended up shutting because of COVID, unfortunately. So you can't go there anymore. There are plenty of great schools, and if you want to learn about them, I can point you in the right direction. But the sport of kayaking really said, okay, yeah, you're an adventurer. This is what you want to do. And I even got to the point where I was a sponsored kayaker at one point, getting free gear and things like that to post videos and content and stuff like that. I don't do that anymore because I used to paddle 100 days a year, and now I'm lucky if I get in 20. But still love it. I still will go to pretty big. I can jump on a class 5 rapid and work my way down comfortably, and not squeezing too hard on the paddle. But lots of good stories.
So class 5, that's like that's the biggest rapids, or what? Kind of give me the different distinctions. If you say class 5, is that big time rapids we talking about?
Maybe people that are climbers, or maybe if you're familiar with climbing as well, you have all these different ratings where you have kind of a 5.12 or a 5.7 or a, you have all these different kind of classifications. Whitewater, I don't think has a very good system, but yes, 1 to 5 is the typical system, where 1 is going to be kind of flat water. 2 is, you got some rapids, you got some stuff going on. A 3 is you have rapids with obstacles that possibly can hold you and flip you over and things like that. Class 4 is you have multiple obstacles and multiple moves that you have to make, and the danger level is up even higher. 5 is very large, powerful water with multiple obstacles with must-make moves that you got to make them, right? Or else you're going to be in trouble potentially. And then you have maybe a little bit of a rating system that goes to, hey, this is a 5+ or a 5- or a 3+ or a 3-. So you get a little bit in there. Really, I think the rating system should be okay, what's the difficulty in terms of what I just said, in terms of like number of obstacles, must make moves, things like that. And then I think there should be a consequence or a danger rating attached to it. Because I've been on class 3 rapids where if I flip over and swim, I'm going to scrape up my legs and be bleeding or maybe get a concussion or something like that, even though the whitewater on top isn't that bad, but it's shallow and it's fast, right? Whereas I've been in class 5 rapids where if I were to swim, yeah, I mean, I get sucked underwater a couple times, but I'm not going to get all scraped up and banged up in the same way. And so it's kind of interesting. You kind of learn how to deal with it. And then there's technically class 6, which is usually a something that hasn't been run. Usually once it's been run, it's then bumped down to a 5+. And there should probably be some sort of a rating for waterfalls, which are a totally different beast. And there's some people that kayak, and the biggest waterfall I've ever done is like the biggest single drop I've done is just about 35, maybe 40 feet. And the highest that has been done by other kayakers is 189 feet. And so, as you can imagine, my 35 footer is actually probably a 5+ rapid, right? But so's the 189 footer. So that doesn't really make
sense. Plus. Yeah.
I don't know what you call it. Maybe you should just say a W before it, right? It's a W5+, right? It's the hardest level of waterfall you can do. Anyway.
Wow.
But yeah, kayaking is a really fun sport that not a lot of people do because it's hard to get into.
Yeah, I think you're my first kayaker I've ever had on the shows. I've had someone who went whitewater rafting and stuff that, not in a kayak, totally different thing. Oh, was it Otter Bar? What was the name of the place again that you went? Otter Bar?
Yep.
Well, are they just there on a river, or do they have a man-made thing, or how did that work?
Yeah, so this one is, it's in Northern California in a small, literally fork in the road called Forks of Salmon. And population, 31 maybe. And I might be generous on that. Like, anyway, so it's very, very, very small. And it's in Northern California, very, very remote. You go up kind of near Redding, kind of near Mount Shasta in that area, and then it kind of goes south, about an hour and a half kind of on 1-lane roads along rivers and things like that through the mountains, and really beautiful drive. I really miss that drive. I wish I could. I haven't done it in, since COVID, really. And so it's been a few years. But I used to do it almost every year. It's kind of my annual pilgrimage to get out there. But they have the Salmon River, California Salmon River, okay. Idaho salmon. And then they have another river called the Klamath River, which is a really big one that's been in the news actually a little bit lately because of a bunch of dams that have been taken down that were kind of blamed a little bit, for, Governor Newsom and things like that with the fires and water supplies and things like that. Really, it had nothing to do with the dams being taken down, but somebody wanted to cast blame there. But there's an indigenous tribe there that really holds those waters sacred, and they opened it back up all the way, got rid of all the dams all the way through, so it's free flowing again now. But anyway, the Klamath River is a big kind of warmer water, but big, huge waves that just are all over the place and throw you all over the place, and you feel like you're in the middle of a big maelstrom. Whereas the salmon is more tight and rocks and moves and things. And so there's different types of, just like there's different types of skiing, right? You could like ski through trees, and that's very tight, specific, make your line, or you're going to end up, base planning with, hugging a tree. And then there's, wide open, groomers, and there's powder skiing and things like that. So there's different types of rivers as well, where some are tight and small, low volume. Some are tight and small with big volume, and they push through hard. And then others are just huge, massive things that have, holes that can eat buses. Anyway, it's fun to. Otter Bar is in a place where you have probably 30 to 40 runs, like places you can go to, 3-mile stretch here, 7-mile stretch here, 9-mile stretch here, whatever, within about an hour. And so you just go all up. So it's a perfect place to have beginners, and the best in the world can go there and get their money's worth.
Wow. So when you go and you get in the water for the first time and you're doing this, you said when you got done with that week, you're like, I'm hooked. What was it? Was there a moment that first week where you're like, something happened? Like, kind of tell me about that.
So kayaking is tough to get people into, mostly because of what happens when things go wrong. And they will go wrong. When you first get onto a river and the water starts moving, you're upside down very quickly. Like, it's just, you don't understand how. I mean, do you ski?
I don't ski, no.
That's okay. What about water skiing?
I've water skied, yeah.
Perfect. Have you ever caught an edge wrong? right? Where you're going to turn and you accidentally put an edge down and you're right.
Exactly.
The boat has to come around and get you, right? The same is true on a kayak, right? Or on skis, on snow skis, right? Catch an edge, you're going to go down. When you're in the water and you're strapped in and you have this thing called a spray skirt that keeps the water out. So you're literally just kind of stuck in there. And you can grab the spray skirt and you can rip it off and push yourself out and swim to the edge and drag your gear to the side. But you can imagine if you're in a big rapid, you don't want to do that, right? I was talking a second ago about like a class 3 rapid that's very fast. And by the way, what I'm talking about is the Provo River, right? Bridal Veil. Right under there, it's fast and swift and sharp, and people die in there every year, literally. Just people that get too close, or they go say, I'm gonna swim that, and bad things happen, or maybe a kid falls in, and there's tragedies here and there. But kayakers have to learn how to roll their boat back over, and it's called an Eskimo roll, or just a roll, and it's kind of a weird move. It took me 3 days to get it. Right, I started on Monday. By Wednesday, I figured it out, right? After hours and hours and hours of practicing. And so also after many times, flipping over in the river and having to do what I just said, gather all my gear and get it to the side and pick up this huge heavy boat with water and try to empty it out. And it's just exhausting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do this one more time, right? But so most people stop before they get their roll. Because first of all, I've seen a lot of people, I've taught a lot of people to kayak too, right? I actually ran a kayak school while I was at BYU. It's just one of the things I did on the side. And I had 8 boats, and I've just, put up ads and take people and teach them how to kayak on the Provo River, right? On the easy section where people inner tube, right? Even there, when people flip over, and I've told them, okay, look, grab your spray skirt, grab this handle, rip it off, push yourself out, and I'll help you. We'll get to the side. But they just, they flip over and they're just flailing, and they've forgotten everything I've taught them. And
that would be me.
It's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but it's scary. Its bottom line is it's scary.
For sure.
Upside down in water. It's just scary. And so once you get that, then you're not afraid of flipping. Then you learn how to not flip. That's step 3, right? But really you are going to flip when you're learning. And if you can learn how to flip back up, then you can keep going. And I think we'll take a pause for a second here, because I think it's a good life lesson that I've really taught a lot. But you're going to flip over in life. You absolutely are. I've done it way more times than most people probably. But some self-inflicted and some not. But when you flip over, you just got to get back up, right? You got to get back up, get back on the horse, whatever you want to call it, and keep going. And when you learn that you can flip over and then get back up and be okay, and it's okay, and then the world of kayaking really opens up. Now, when the teacher or the instructor says, okay, I want you to go behind that rock and catch that eddy, and then I want you to zip across this big wave and try to catch this other eddy over there by the rock wall. If I know I'm going to flip doing those things, like there's about 8 edge changes I'm going to have to do. And if I miss one of them, I'm over. I'm going to be afraid to kind of go for it. But if I know I'm going to be okay, if I flip over and then get back up, now I can really push hard to go and try that new move. And then I nail the move. Ooh, and that feels really good, right? It's like when you hit a good golf shot. You're just like, I love golf. And then you hit 5 bad ones. And then you get that perfect drive, or you get a hole in one, or some crazy 25-foot putt goes in, and you're just like, yes, I'm coming back tomorrow, And
That's
so
it.
Getting to a point where you can have those successes is harder in kayaking than it is in something like golf or soccer or basketball or one of those less consequential things, right? Extreme sports. I wrote an article on that I published on LinkedIn, I don't know, maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. I'm not sure when it was. But it basically said that startups are like extreme sports and big companies are like team sports, basketball, whatever, right? If you mess up in an extreme sport, like skydiving, you might die, right? If you mess up in kayaking on something really big, you might die, right? If you mess up rock climbing, you didn't put in some anchor right and your rope wasn't whatever, you might die. Or at the very least, maybe you won't die, but you might get injured pretty bad, right?
For sure.
If you mess up on the, on the basketball court, whatever, right? And so in a startup, you're gonna, you have maybe 3 people on your team early on. And if one person messes up really bad, the company might be dead. It's gone, right? And yeah, you might be able to recover and go do something else. The people aren't actually going to die, but the company is gone. Whereas for Microsoft, you take that shot and you miss, maybe you get fired. Company's fine. Company doesn't care. company goes on. So that team sport, the team will continue on. You as an individual contributor, maybe even if you miss the shot, you're okay. And they might not even fire you. At worst case scenario, they fire you. So, but it comes down to just being willing to push through some discomfort. If you can push through the discomfort, kayaking becomes one of the best sports on the planet.
Good way to look at it, because I've watched a few of those competitions on TV with these kayakers, and it just seems like such hard work. And I think that's what it is. I think for someone like me or someone who hasn't ever done it, it's kind of like, man, maybe not, because it's scary to be upside down and not, in water, not be able to breathe. Like, that's a scary feeling. It's a panicky feeling. And so when I watch them doing, going up against, the water, and it's just amazing how they do that. And they flip over like it's no problem for them, but obviously it takes practice. So it took you a few days. Sounds like when you first were doing this, you got that figured out, and that got you hooked, because then you could start doing it.
What? I think it was the transition of being scared constantly. Scared might not be quite the right word, because I wasn't necessarily scared of drowning. I learned quickly how to get out. I knew I wasn't going to die, but it's still not fun to be accidentally thrown over, right? Sometimes even violently if it's a strong wave and you're going for something big, right? And, it kind of just whips you over, and you're just like, but I'm nervous. I'm worried that's going to happen, because I've experienced, oh my gosh, now I'm over, and now I'm cold, and now I can't breathe. I don't know what's going on. And now I have to get to the side in case, one of the instructors doesn't come to me. There actually is a way that the instructor can come up, and you put your hands on the side. It's called a T-rescue, right? You flip over, and you roll into a ball like this. So you put your head kind of forward down on the kayak, spray deck, so that you're not exposing your face to rocks, right? So you go like that, and then you put your arms down, and which is really putting them up out of the water. Then you tap on the boat like this, and then you rub your hands back and forth along the side of the boat, moving back and forth, waiting for the instructor's boat to touch your hand. And, because he's just going to come barreling in and try to T-bone your boat so that he can get to you quickly, so you can get up and start breathing again. And you feel it, and you go, oh, and then boom, you can pop yourself up. Before you know how to roll, you can use another boat to help you. And so I learned how to do that, and that got a little bit better. Especially if I knew, okay, we're practicing this. This is this spot. We're going to go from here to this spot to this spot. And, a lot of times on a river, you can actually, even though the river's moving down, there's rocks and boulders and banks and things called eddies, where the water is actually now going upstream, right? And so you can stop and work on different features and moves and learn how to navigate around the river. And so we would stop at some places, and I see, okay, there's nothing dangerous right here below me. It's easy water. If I flip upside down, I can hold my breath for 15 or 20 seconds. No big deal. I want to wait for the instructor to get me. And if after 20 seconds I say, you know what, I'm not feeling comfortable anymore, I pop it and I get up. No big deal. And so I learned that I could get up like that. And then I learned, okay, now I'm comfortable hanging out for 20 seconds upside down. By the way, today, I don't like hanging upside down for 20 seconds, because I'm hitting rocks with my helmet, and I'm usually in harder water. And so if I flip over, boom, I'm up in half a second.
Lickety split.
As I can now. But when you're learning and you're on calm, easy stuff, you can. So you just learn to get comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And that's really what happened throughout that week. On Monday, the way that the instructor, I actually later went on to attend their instructor classes, right? Where I learned how to be an otter bar guide, right? And I'd go in the early season when the water's huge, and I was out of my class. I felt, that whole time there were so many good kayakers there. But anyway, there were like 8 of us, but they were all better than me, it felt like. So anyway, I at the beginning of the week, they really hammer you hard. Hey, get your head down, get that hand down, get this down. And, as you go throughout the week, you get more confident, more comfortable. And by Friday, they're taught to say, hey, look, even if they're still making some of those mistakes, they've improved. And so just focus on the improvements. By the end of the week, they should be getting praises from you the whole way down. They should feel confident. They should do all this. And so that's just good coaching and good teaching etiquette. And they were very, very, very good at doing that. And so that's probably why I got tricked into loving it. I thought I was good. I thought it was awesome. I was like, I sucked at the beginning of the week because they told me how bad I was constantly. And by the end of the week, I was amazing. And hey, good job. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you hit that move. That was so good. Look at that roll. Boom, you're nailing it. Your form is incredible. Whatever, like all of those things. And of course, that led me to come back the next year and then, you go 10, 11, 12 years to something like that while kayaking in between and having all those fun misadventures by yourself and learning how to do it, navigating bigger things and, meeting other kayakers that are going through similar progressions. Yeah, it just, they got me. They got me hooked.
They got you hooked. Is there a place where people say, this is where the kayakers like to go? Like, is there a certain place, or do you have a place for you that's like, this is Jon's place that he loves the kayak?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own favorite rivers, of course.
Okay, yeah.
I'll give about 5 favorite ones, and I'll tell you why they're different, right? First of all, Utah. Utah has a lot of outdoors, lots of rivers, not lots of great kayaking. There's a good saying that the best kayaking in Utah is in Idaho. So, and that's very true. One of the best places to kayak is up near Boise on the Payette rivers, right? If you go up to Banks, Idaho, which is about 45 minutes, 50 minutes from Boise, you have the hardest class 5 whitewater down one channel. You have on the South Fork, you have class 3, class 4 whitewater. And then down the main channel, it's both of those channels come together and it's called the main Payette. And you have class 3 whitewater that's bigger and more fun. And, people raft it and all those things. People raft both channels. Well, actually, they don't really do the North Fork. The North Fork, the 5 is too dangerous for your average Joe. I've never done it. Too consequential. If I were to come out of my boat, even though I look at the moves and I'm like, I think I could make those moves, right? Like, I'm pretty sure I could do it. Like, I'm a good class 5 kayaker. I'm actually 90% positive I could go down it and nail it. But it's that 10%, if I decide to go down it and it messes me up, it's like sharp granite underneath there. Like, and people just break their leg. I mean, it's crazy stories on the North Fork, but they hold a huge championship there every year. And so, it's a good place, but it's not for everybody. There's a certain level of consequence that I'm just not willing to tackle these days. Maybe it's because I'm older and I'm not as stupid as I was when I was.
I was going to say, maybe, yeah, when you're in your 20s, maybe would you have considered it? But
yeah, I probably would have more.
Yeah.
That. But now I'm like, look, I can find my class 5 thrills with less consequences. Mm-hmm. That's why I think there needs to be that dual scale of some consequences versus the difficulty of the actual whitewater itself. So anyway, so I really love Banks. Here in Utah, honestly, the Bridalveil section of the Provo River as a home run is primo. The only thing that it struggles with a little bit is its season is relatively short, right? It can be on for 3 weeks sometimes 2 weeks. One year it was open for 4 months, and I was just in heaven. I was there every day, just like crank out. I can go from top to bottom about 6 miles in, 45 minutes. So I can get a couple laps and then, head home, and I've been gone for 2 hours, whatever. Really fun. So I like that. I also love, if you've ever heard of Joe's Valley, which is you head out towards Price, just head up Price Canyon, and then you hit Price, and then you go south for about 45 minutes, and you're there. And Joe's Valley is actually a world-class rock climbing destination. And there happens to be a river that runs right down that canyon out of the reservoir, out of Joe's Valley Reservoir. And it is awesome. It's beautiful. So I love those places. Now, if you go outside of this, Utah, Idaho area, I really love Otter Bar. I love the rivers, the California salmon, and they just obviously have a special place. I love those rivers. And I can literally, even though I haven't been there in 6 years, I could say, all right, let me take you down a run in my head, right? I'll draw it out for you and say, yeah, this is this rapid, and you're going to need to go here, and there's a little spot you're going to try to hit. I just know it. It's amazing how it sticks with you. Well, my favorite trip I've ever been on is in Mexico. I went to Mexico with one of the best kayakers in the world, a guy named Evan Garcia. And he put on basically a clinic kind of, and he's like, hey, Jon, come down. And again, it's a small world. This guy is a world champion, #1 world champion, extreme whitewater kayaking, like does big waterfalls, all these things. And really, really cool guy, amazing whitewater kayaker. And he's like, yeah, come down to the clinic. Come, let me show you all the waterfalls and all the things I like to do. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And it was a full week of class 5 whitewaters, biggest whitewater trip I've ever done in my life. And I really felt like I had to step up my game to do that. But I did it with, almost one-on-one coaching type opportunities there. And that's really, really fun. It's like LeBron saying, hey, I want you to play in the NBA for a few minutes. And so I'm coaching for a week, and then we'll let you play for a minute, or for 5 minutes during a game or something. It's kind of like that, right? You get to be with the best of the best and have them show you how to do it. And then you get to enjoy that. So I really, really love that. I've got lots of, in fact, my extreme sports is like entrepreneurship article that I wrote actually revolves around my trip to Mexico. And so you can read that, see pictures and videos and fun stuff of what I did. So Anyway, love that. And I really love actually the Ottawa River is a really fun one in Canada.
Ottawa. Okay.
And it's big water, right? Which is different than what I normally hear. Provo is, baby water, right? Whereas the Ottawa is just huge, huge, huge wide rivers and massive waves and just huge rolling things that just like you throw, you're going up a wave and you're like going up it for a while. Really, really fun. And then I've actually rafted the Grand Canyon. I haven't kayaked that. I really, really wanted to. Rafted it twice. And man, that's some of the best whitewater and adventure there is on the planet. Doesn't really get much better than that.
Wow. I want to hear about this 35-foot waterfall. Kind of what was the situation behind this? And then what's it like going over a waterfall in a kayak? I mean, that's got to be, for me, it's scary, but.
Scary is a word for it. Absolutely. Nerve-wracking. Got a good video of it. You can watch it on YouTube. It's maybe 5 or 6 minutes long. It just kind of shows me going and doing. It's called, have you ever been up to Yellowstone?
I have, yes.
And have you ever stopped at Lower Mesa Waterfall, Lower Mesa Falls, and Upper Mesa Falls?
I believe so.
Yeah. I bet you have. Most people have that have been up there. It's a good, easy turn off, and you go, and it's just it's a beautiful waterfall. And in fact, I'll just pull up a quick picture of it so you can kind of get it in your mind.
Perfect.
But it's a 2-tier waterfall. It's actually 60 feet, but you do like 20, 25 feet and then 35 feet, right? It's like boom, and you go, and then boom, right? And it's really, really a beautiful spot. Yeah, this picture will give you an idea here if I can get it to load. But the first time I went there, you kayak kind of the river Henry's Fork of the snake, basically is what it is. And there's a bunch of waterfalls, kind of warm up things. And then you actually have to not rappel, but you have to kind of use some ropes and climb over something and just kind of carefully scramble down, because you can't do Upper Mesa Falls. It's about a 200-foot waterfall that lands on rocks, and it's just not going to happen. And so you have to walk down that, and then you kind of hike along, and you get back in the river, then you hike along for a minute. Middle Mesa Falls, and then you kind of walk around that one too, because it's also kind of weird. And then you get out and you just kind of walk up to the edge. You put your boat down on the edge. So this is Lower Mesa Falls. See if I can get it to center on the screen there.
Okay.
So it's about 65 feet, like I said, and you can see.
I can see the little middle part. Yeah.
You can do it actually right here is where you go off. You go off here, and then you go off right
in there, and then you go off again. Gotcha.
You can go off if you want to do it all once right there. But that's a very risky move, because there's a flake that comes out, some rocks that stick out, and you have to not hit that. So again, one of those things where I probably physically could do it, but it's just not worth it. If I'm a foot or two off and I hit that and I roll weird, and I don't want to hurt myself, right?
Yeah.
Lower Mesa Falls, from a danger standpoint, is relatively low. You need to be able to psych yourself up. You need to be confident enough to understand, when I hit the water, it's gonna hit me hard. And so you have to be able to deal with that, right? Smacking you in the chest and in the face, and you got to put your body in the right place. Very possibly going to roll over. So you need to be able to get smacked in the face hard and stay, calm and roll up, and you're good. You did it, right? That happens. And so I had worked up to the point where I thought I could do that. And I remember getting to the edge, and I'm like, that's just like, this is crazy. I can feel the feeling that I felt just thinking about it. And the cool thing about when you're kayaking with other people, especially when they've done it before you see them do it. I'm really, really good at following someone. Like if I see someone do it, I'm like, I got this. Like when I was in Mexico, side detour story. When I was in Mexico, there's this one rapid that's a little tiny chute. It goes down, and then it smashes into a wall and shoots to the right, and smashes into another wall and shoots to the left. It's called S-turn. And it's just a little tiny thing. We walked up to it. We all got out. And a few people said, yeah, I'm going to walk around this. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to walk around this too. There's no way. Then I stood there and I watched 6 people do it. And I was like, I got this. And I did it, right? So I can be talking to it, right? Inside here. Like no one, by the way, the kayaking community is really, really cool. They don't pressure you. They want you to say, I feel like this is good. Nobody ever says, you walked around that. I've never heard that be said ever. They're like, I'm glad you walked around that. Do you have a good solid day? Because you want to come away with a good experience.
Sure.
You don't want to have that misadventure that turns you off from the sport, because you're now terrified of smashing your face against a wall or something weird. Right now, obviously, that doesn't mean go after something you're not ready for, but you want if you can do it, then do it, right? So anyway, but no one's going to push you. So back to Lower Mesa, I watched a couple other people do it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm the only one left here, and I can either, carry my boat back like 6 miles, or I can just follow them. Oh, here we go. And I remember sitting down in my kayak, and I was just like, all right, it's prayer time. Just help me to be safe and make it down, whatever, say my prayer. Good. Grab my paddle, push off the edge. And you push off, if you remember that picture, you literally push in like 10 feet from the edge. Like you put your boat in right there, because above it, it's just weird. You can't really kayak down from the river. And so you just kind of push it and you're off the edge, right? And the first one's about a 20-footer, and you just kind of go off, maybe it's like 23 feet, something like that. Anyway, so I go and I just kind of go off, and I'm like, hey, I'm fine, I'm away. And now all of a sudden, the
next one's right there.
Big, and that's the big one, right? And I'm like, I have nothing to do but just go for it. And so I'm just, I'm going to go over and boom, come back up, and I roll up and I turn around and I'm like, yeah, just all the celebration, and I'm filled with adrenaline. Amazing. Got some great pictures and video of it, obviously. And then, it's funny. I remember the hit being pretty hard. I remember being like, wow, that was more intense than I expected. That was my first big waterfall. I was just like, that was a big hit. Like I felt like a bus just kind of hit me, right? But it was a soft water bus, kind of like getting hit by a water balloon in the head, but like 100 of them from all sides. Anyway, so we finished out the run. Great day, high fives all around. I'm like, all right, guys, they were camping for the night. I'm like, I'm driving home. I'm heading back to Salt Lake. And so I actually drove from let's see, where was I living at the time? Anyway, I think I was in Orem or something like that, or Provo. Anyway, I drove from there, got there that morning, ran the whole thing, and drove all the way back. Right.
Wow.
So, this is right. It's 4 or 5 hour drive each way. But anyway, about an hour into the drive home, my boat's packed up. Everything's good. I'm kind of like, my body's like, okay, you're safe now. And I'm just like, my neck is pretty sore. I wonder what that's from. And then I'm like, well, duh.
You smacked it.
You got to do it right. I mean, it's fun to watch, Red Bull videos and fun, crazy stuff and things. It's very easy to be like, oh, it's cool. I want to do a 30-foot waterfall or a 50-footer or a 70-footer. I can do that. It looks soft. They just go, they roll up, and they're all smiling and happy. But no, that people break ribs and teeth and hands and wrists, and because it's gravity still. Gravity still works even for kayakers, and you gotta do it right. If I were to do it again right now, I would, if I were right now on the edge, I haven't kayaked in 6 months, I would get in my boat right now and do it. And I actually feel like I would do it better today than I did it back when I did it, I don't know, 8 years ago or so, whenever that was. But because I've thought about it a lot, I actually, when I learned how to roll, the reason I learned how to roll was because I was told by one of the instructors, they said, look, you got to do this motion, and you got to put, it's very counterintuitive motion. You have to like put your ear down, and you have to like get rid of all of the resistance in the roll in order to do it. So you have to practice this move. And he's like, just do it like 20 or 30 times right before you go to bed. Just lay in bed and just do the motion just over and over like this, right? And just while laying down in bed. And I woke up the next morning, I went out, nailed it, right? And there's some psychology with that. Like you remember things better if you do it right before bed, things like that. And that worked for me. And I was able to do it. But I just visualizing a lot of the rivers and the things that have gone right or haven't gone right, I think about them over and over and over. I play them back in my head. When I did that waterfall, I didn't stay upright, which is okay, right? It's totally fine. Like when you plug a waterfall, like the water's going to do what it's going to do with you. It's cool if you can manage to like push out a little bit, manage to stay up. But I flipped over, and if I were to do it again, I would be trying very consciously to stay upright. But the first time you do something like that, everything's so fast. Everything happens so fast. You don't have time to react or plan or hardly like you can stand on the edge there and be like, okay, I'm going over the edge. And you can, a lot of people will visualize things before they go do it. But the first time the water hits you in the face, right? All bets are off, right? It's classic. First time you get punched in the face,
the Mike Tyson thing, everything's good until you get punched in the face, right? Yeah, exactly.
You're going to just start forgetting things. And so now that I've had time to internalize that, I've also done 30 more waterfalls since that, and maybe 70 more waterfalls since I last did that at Lower Mesa. And now I feel like I'd be able to, pop off the first edge. I know exactly what I'm doing. Great. Make sure the GoPro's good. All right, let's kick to the edge here. And I stroke there. Boom. I know I can do it. As I'm telling you that, in my mind, I've seen the water and I've seen what my boat is doing. I have the ability to visualize that just because I've spent a lot of time focusing on it.
Definitely. So something that's interesting about this whole thing, there's a lot of, the adrenaline of going down a waterfall. There's going up waves. There's a lot of intense things that are happening. But you said something that I thought was interesting. You said right before you did it, though, you said a little prayer to yourself. How does praying, how does calmness, peace, how does that play into any of this, or does it? How does it?
It absolutely does. Absolutely does. Peace is one of the things that in my creations, that I try to portray and I try to share, right? I try to, said another way, I try to bring the spirit into people's lives through the things that I share, hopefully, right? Not 100% of my content, but a lot of it is going to have some angle of peace, like, oh, this is just so beautiful. Or I hope you can feel what I'm feeling right now when I look at this. Or, hey, let me play this music for you. What does it make you feel? And hey, whatever, right? If I play a special musical number in church, right, I'm hoping that somebody in the audience is just going to be touched by the Spirit and feel something and get an answer, whatever it is, right? Feel some love. But peace is so important. Even in the middle of falling down a waterfall, you need to have a clear mind. And if you don't have peace while you're, walking up to the waterfall, or you're driving away from the waterfall, while you're in that moment, you don't want any distractions. Now, I will say this one thing. I'll give one little caveat there. When you are on a river in the middle of a rapid, you really aren't thinking about much other than that. You enter what many people call flow state, right? Where your body just kind of takes over. Nothing else matters. My taxes don't matter when I'm approaching that lip. They don't matter at all. My fight that I had with someone doesn't matter. Whatever. It kind of all clears out a little bit, right? But one of the things I've worked on, every year at the beginning of my week at Otter Bar, they would say, well, what do you want to work on this week? Right. And that became an interesting question for me the longer I went. Because, the second year I'm like, I really want to know my role, and I want to progress from class 3 to class 4, and I want to get good at this move and whatever. So I'd have very specific things. But then I get to where I'm comfortable in class 4. I'm a good kayaker. I can tackle a 5, whatever. And then I got to where I'm comfortable on class 5. So what do I work on now? What am I supposed to do now? What I wanted to work on was awareness in the chaos. That takes a lot of concentration on developing that skill, right? I could show you pictures or video of me in the middle of just crazy stuff going on. But inside my head, it's kind of like they talk about for a football player, right? Like the game slows down, right? People say, oh, I got to college. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was so fast. They just run at me from everywhere. They moved to the NFL and they're like, oh my gosh, everyone's so fast. And then you're there for a while and all of a sudden you're like, okay, the game has slowed down. I see things. I know what's going on. I see this and I understand out of the corner of my eye what's happening here. And so I can move out of the pocket and whatever I need to do. Very similar in kayaking, right? Now I say, okay, I'm going down this rapid called the Ma, M-A-W, the Ma. It's crazy and it's just big, like crazy rapid. And it's kind of one of the bigger ones that you do when you're just getting into class 4 and you're like, okay, this is the meat of this is the crux of the day. We got to get past this rapid. And now I know it perfectly. I enter, I'm gonna hit a top left eddy, and I'm gonna then come out and I'm gonna just kind of zip down and do a little S-turn behind another huge boulder in the middle. I'm gonna cut over to the right side of the river. I'm gonna go down, and there's gonna be a huge boulder right here, and there's a hole right here, and there's this right here. And okay, if I move over here now I can look over, I can see this because I know what's below me here. So just learning how to understand, to stand, walk up next to a rapid and be like, okay, this matters, this matters, this matters. Everything else I can figure out on the fly. Then I jump in the rapid and I'm like, okay, I don't want to touch here. I do want to aim for this. Here's the cool move or whatever it is, right? And so now I'm in and I'll have to make decisions. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not in the position for the cool move, so I'm not going to go for it. And I have to make that decision in 0.1 seconds, right? I'm like, oh, I can't take that stroke, so I'm going to instead go this way. I'm going to go there and I'm going to hit that. And if you take 1 second to make that decision, you can make mistakes. So getting into that flow state, being able to slow down, being able to understand what's going around in that chaos is what I think is part of the fun and why I love it, right? Slowing down that puzzle and figuring it out to where I can enjoy it and appreciate the chaos that's going on. It's organized chaos. It's predictable.
Predictable, organized chaos.
You know the water is going to go down. You know that when water hits something, it's going to bounce off of it. You start to learn these principles that then put together features that make up a river, and you learn how to use them and harness them for your own good.
This has been fascinating. I've never knew anything about whitewater raft kayaking. So hearing about kayaking, what's all involved, has been fascinating. For you, what are some of the challenges that you think you face? And it doesn't even have to be with kayaking. It can be just life in general for Jon.
Maybe everyone's like this, but I feel like I'm really good at doing everything wrong the first time. Like in big dramatic ways, like starting a company and losing millions of dollars, and then starting another one and not doing it, nailing it, figuring it out, and, or, going to college and failing my first semester, which I did. And then, ended up graduating with all A's that last semester. Amazing, right? And, figuring out how to deal with things. And so maybe back to some of what I said in the beginning, right? Learning how to hit something wrong and then regroup, get back up and say, all right, I'm going to keep going, right? I can roll and I can roll back up and I'm still okay. And obviously there's a beautiful thing that helps us get over those challenges, which is the Savior, right? Savior understands what we've been through. Not only that, he died and went through the process to enable us to repent and to do better and to try again. Even if it wasn't something that we went and we sinned or whatever, maybe we just did something wrong, right? He understands that too. He can help us learn how to, or at least give us the strength to get back up and try again and do something like that. I've had a million challenges in my life that, I got sued a couple years ago that cost me a lot of money to try to defend. And it was completely bogus. And they were accusing me of like horrible things that, like if they happened to be true, I would have gone to jail for like 10 years, like crazy stuff, right? Like fraud, wire fraud type stuff like that. And it was all bogus. It all got dismissed and all those things, right? But facing those things, like, man, it like really works at you, And anybody, if you raise capital and you do whatever, people are going to come after you, whether you're successful or not successful. They're going to come after you for more money and say they deserve more. Like it's just part of the game. And so I'm not mad about that anymore. But at the time, man, I had to like study people throughout history that were accused of things that clearly weren't, were false, and how did they deal with that public, people looking down on you, or maybe just privately, like, how do I deal with that? Why this isn't fair? Like, why is this happening to me? Like, why, right? Trying to answer those why questions has been really, really tough. Why are these challenges coming? Right. And I understand. If I'm sitting on the other side and someone's telling me these things, I'm saying, look, you got to trust the process. You learn, what am I supposed to learn here? What, you become stronger through trials. When everything's going great, you're not really learning. And when you have trials, you become stronger. And so I've been able to, work through those things and study lots of wonderful people, whether they're prophets or just great other people, or even the Savior himself. How did he deal with, he was accused of all kinds of things, right? And how did he deal with that? How can I take a perfect approach to responding to this? And did I nail it? No, I probably got an F on that, but I appreciate the trials. I appreciate the challenges. I appreciate when I roll upside down. Kayaking is one of those things where you get immediate feedback.
Yeah.
You do it wrong, you're upside down, right? Or, something like that. Or if you're, if you're mountain biking, you do something weird, boom, okay, now you're bleeding on your elbow and whatever. So I appreciate those sports and extreme sports. There's that immediate feedback. Like, okay, I did something wrong. Now let me think about it. How can I do it right? And sometimes I'll get out of my boat and I'll walk back up the river and I'll say, I'm going to hit this spot again and I'm going to get it right. And sometimes I won't, right? There's a huge rapid down in Mexico called Meat Grinder, and it lives up to its name. It's terrifying. One of the most terrifying rapids I've ever done. And the first time I did it, I got meat grinded. I just got sucked right into this probably about a 35-foot drop, but all the water is just coming right into this like hole. And I just went right down into the hole. Washing machine for 10, 12 seconds, then roll up, and I'm just like just so tired. It wears you out. It wears your muscles out really fast fighting water. Water always wins. Yeah. In the long run, it will win, right? Water never gives up, and you will eventually. So anyway, but you're just throwing you around, and then finally I'm up, and I'm just like, but then, a couple days later, we came back, and I'm like, I'm going to get this, right? And even though I had been washing machined, I knew what I had done wrong. And I knew what I needed to try this time. And this time I overcorrected, went straight up and backwards down the same thing. Anyway, so I got meat grinded again twice in a row. And now I want to go do it again so that I can I've only done it twice. It's hard to get in there. It's a crazy, epic adventure. Again, part of that article, if you want to read about it, see a picture of it. So anyway, challenges though, they give you feedback, right? They teach you about yourself and they give you opportunities to grow. Ultimately, that's that's why we're here on Earth. It's a test to see how we respond to the bad times and whether or not we stay faithful, right? Someone I studied a lot was Job. Job had everything go wrong, right? God let Satan test Job. Satan was sure he would give up, and he didn't. Job had a lot of questions. He asked why a lot of times, but he never said, I forsake thee, right? He never gave up. He never blamed God. He just asked why. What am I supposed to learn here, right? And man, if you just keep asking that question and working hard and being faithful and doing everything you can, then you're going to get through. You're going to get through anything. I told you, I think before we started this call, that I'm writing a book called Time and All Eternity. And it's, I've got maybe 30 pages of outlines and I've got the whole first chapter written, things like that. So I could probably knock it out in a month if I really, really dedicated myself and pushed everything else aside. But I have, I don't know, probably ADD or something like that. I like to do a lot of things. But that book is about, the idea behind it is I want to do all these things and I don't have enough time on Earth to do them. And so I have to figure out, how am I going to spend my time wisely? How am I going to figure it out? And I've just been trying to figure out, okay, God, what do you want me to do with my life? Like, what's the main thing? Like, I'm really good at the piano and I compose and I write, I put out albums of peaceful music and I do videos and I get lots of followers and cool, right? I also really love adventure. And I actually really love building software and being an entrepreneur and trying to put solutions into the world that can help with whatever. And I like doing all these things and I could keep going, right? There's about 10 things I want to do and I just can't do them all. And so I've been really praying a lot saying, please just tell me, right? That's what I want. But I got the answer like 2 days ago from President Uchtdorf or from Elder Uchtdorf. He and his wife spoke to the young adults and I didn't watch that fireside. I think it was Sunday, maybe Saturday, a few days ago. But I saw a clip of it the next day that one of these awesome, church Instagram pages posts. And he basically said that Joseph and crew were asking, what should we do now? What should we do next? What should we do with this? And he said, his answer was, it mattereth not. Do what you want. Figure it out, right? Go do what you want. Yes, sometimes God is going to say, like he did for my dad back in 1998, he said, you were planning on moving to Utah. I'm going to detour you for 3 years. I'm going to send you on a mission. Then you can go to Utah, right? And you got to be willing at the time when God says, I need you for a minute to say yes. Or maybe I need you for an apostle's lifetime. Maybe I need you for 50 years. And I think a lot of us would be willing to do that. And we're kind of all looking for that, I think. I think a lot of times we're saying, what should I do? I want to do what you want me to do. When God's saying, no, I need you to grow and figure that out for yourself. It mattereth not. And then he adds one more tag that's important. Only be faithful. Just do what you're supposed to do. Be good. Live all the principles. Keep your covenants. Do the things you know you're supposed to do. And it doesn't matter if you're a janitor or a CEO or a kayaker or a musician or an influencer or a homemaker or whatever, a chicken tender, right? Whatever the heck you want to do that thing. Go nuts. Go big. Be rich. Don't be rich. Go be the president. Go be whatever, And now, again, like I said, I do believe that some people are pushed in certain directions. And I've asked myself many times, like, man, I've got this gift. I'm in the top 1% of 1% of pianists in the world. Should I go all in on that? And I've definitely put more focus on that probably over the last year. But I still feel pulls towards the other things that I want to do. But I've just felt an amazing peace over the last 2 or 3 days thinking about, like, it just boom from Elder Uchtdorf when he said that. I was like, it mattereth not.
It matters not.
Okay. I'm not supposed to just see, but my problem was this, and I'm definitely guilty of this. I think I was putting off a lot of things that I wanted to do, waiting for an answer on which one should I start? Which one should I really go all in on? Like, I want to do this and I want to do this, but tell me what I'm supposed to do and then I'll go that direction, right? And I was just filling blanks. right? Go to the temple 3 times a week, whatever, looking for those answers and everything I can do. Sit in the celestial room for an hour and, hey, you're doing great. Okay, well, what do you want me to do? Or if not, okay, fine. Oh my gosh, I all of a sudden feel energized to say, I'm just going to start doing stuff. And, Elder talked a little bit more, and other people have talked about it a lot, right? The 2 roads talk from Elder Holland, right? Where, you go down this path and, oh, wait, you sent me down the wrong path, but you did it quickly. And boom, there was an obstacle there. So I quickly knew I went down the wrong path. Okay, we got to backtrack, and now we're going to go down the right, right?
Yeah.
I do believe that. I believe that God will, once we start going down a path, if we happen to choose poorly, he'll help us out.
He'll help us out. Yeah, for sure.
He'll help us out. It's not like in Indiana Jones where you drink the wrong cup and it's over, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
No, you get up and go do something, and it matters not. And you're going to run into obstacles. You're going to hurt things. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to, whatever. And fix those things, do better, work hard. And as long as you follow that tag, only be faithful.
Be faithful. Absolutely.
You'll be fine.
John, this was fun. This was fascinating for me to learn about kayaking, for one, but 2, just to learn about who you are. And I know before I even talked to you today, I was kind of like looking at who you were and what you've done. I'm like, man, this guy's done everything. And I'm in my mind too, I kind of felt that overwhelmed, like he's done so much. How does he? And so I appreciate you sharing this, because it mattereth not, only be faithful. I think that's a great lesson in everything, our adventures, in our lives, with our families, being faithful. So I appreciate you sharing that. And thank you so much for coming on Journey with Jake.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Jake.
A special thank you to Jon Cheney for joining me on the show and sharing his love of kayaking, music, creativity, and the many life lessons he's learned along the way. To keep up with John, be sure to follow him on Instagram at Cheney Piano. That is CheneyPiano. And to hear more of his beautiful piano music, visit joncheney.com. That's JONCHENEY.com. John, thank you again for inspiring all of us with your journey and the person you are. Guests like John are what make this podcast so special, and I want to take a moment to thank all of my past and future guests. Journey with Jake has led me to more friendships and connections than I ever could have imagined, and I'm truly grateful for that. I'm also incredibly grateful to you for tuning in. With millions of podcasts out there, the fact that you take the time to listen means the world to me. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It is one of the best ways to help others discover Journey with Jake. And speaking of Journey with Jake, we have another fantastic guest coming your way next week. I had the pleasure of talking with Ross Alcorn, who discovered his passion for travel, especially helping others experience it. That passion led to him start his own business and podcast, and I can't wait for you to hear his story. Remember, it's not always about the destination as it is about the journey. Take care, everybody.